sitting on your seats on an airplane. You've fastened your seatbelts and ready for takeoff. The airplane takes off and everything seems fine. However, only 6 minutes after takeoff, there's this sound and explosion. An airplane full of smoke and terrified passengers screaming as loud as they can. You're getting closer to ground. And finally, there's a horrifying crash, which leads to a heartbreaking death. This was a moving story of Flight 752 to the Ukraine, which was sadly shut down shortly after its takeoff. Now imagine you've lost one of your loved ones in that flight. How would you feel? What would you do? Sometimes there are these mental pressures that push us to our maximum potential. First we're confused, and then vulnerable, and finally anxious and broken. In order to overcome the pressure, our ego offers a few defense mechanisms. Now you might ask, who is ego? To find the answer, we should take a look at Sigmund Freud's theories. He was a famous psychologist who believed our brain has 3 mental areas consisting of id, ego, and superego. Id is a set of uncoordinated instinctual desires. Superego plays the morality and critical role, and ego mediates between id desires and superego criticisms, which makes it more realistic and personal. Now, when you face a mental pressure, your ego uses unconscious defense mechanisms, starting with denial. Denial is refusal to perceive that painful facts exist. How would a patient react to a cancer diagnosis for the first time? Or have you ever thought, how do soldiers get over the pressure and anxiety and survive? Deep fear forces the ego to deny the painful truth. While denying, we're actually using another mechanism called repression. Repression battles the unpleasant thoughts by keeping them away from the conscious mind. After a grief, our mind tends to avoid remembering the memories of the lost person. It is natural, but don't let repression stay forever. Because if it stays for a longer time, it will lead to a stronger mechanism. When the person goes beyond denial and acts in the exact opposite way which he or she feels or thinks, reaction formation is happening. Back to the airplane crash, people who have died and people who are left heartbroken. Contrary to many beliefs, people who are heartbroken wouldn't scream and cry. Some of them use reaction formation instead. Imagine standing in the funeral of a loved one. However, all the sadness, anger, misery, sense of revenge show themselves in a calm, dry face with a small smile. Smiling or laughing in a funeral isn't a common thing. But in some people, when the anxiety reaches a very high level, it shows itself in an uncommon way. Reaction formation is partly caused by repression. Projection. Projection is a process that an individual attributes unwanted thoughts and feelings into another person. For example, you hate someone and you take any chances to hurt them. Would you really accept that you're doing the wrong thing? If you do, you'll feel bad about yourself. But if you convince yourself that the person hates you more, your actions seem like a payback. So that's, instead of reacting in the opposite way, you attribute your emotions into the opposite person. As reaction formation and projection reverse the situation, displacement displaces the situation with a less problematic situation. Think of the last time you were furious at your boss or your teacher. Did you yell at them and take the risk of getting fired? Or you kicked the trash and started a fight with a friend? By kicking the trash and taking out our anger on an innocent person, with which we can get over the original situation. Next we have sublimation. Sublimation is when we express things in a sphere or manner that shows no relation to its original aim, or we take an unacceptable and antisocial desire and channel the energy into socially valued activities. Like many great artists who use the medium of art to express their feelings and use it as something to make up for their frustrating lives. Or like people who evacuate their aggressive thoughts by joining martial arts. So you see, the sport you choose or the music you listen to is a reflection of a part of your personality that you may not even know about it. Moving on, we have intellectualization. You may find it interesting that intellectualization with 96.6% is the most prevalent defense mechanism. It's a transition to reason, where the person avoids uncomfortable thoughts by keeping them away from the conscious mind. This one is essential for people who have jobs that are associated with other people's lives, like pilots and doctors. So if you're gonna have such a career, make sure you don't create deep bonding with each and every person you meet. And finally, the last defense mechanism is rationalization, which is also known as making excuses. Is when ego attempts to make a particular action acceptable to superego. The tricky part is that rationalizations for behaviors could seem like logical, clear explanations, but a trained psychologist realizes the difference between logically explaining one's behavior and covering up for underlying emotions. So, as you see, our unconscious mind is responsible for many things that we do, including dealing with mental pressure. But can the unconscious defense mechanisms truly protect us? The truth is that even though they're totally natural and essential, they don't solve the problems. They ignore them. Now, how would it be if we knew how to consciously get over our problems? Here we'll point out some alternative problem-solving suggestions. Family and friends. Instead of keeping the sore things away from your family, share them with people who care about you. The research have shown that women with breast cancer who discuss their personal problems with their friends have a stronger immune system that attacks cancer cells even more. Moving on, we have problem-focused coping strategy, which encourages people to use solutions instead of changing the form of the problem. For example, for people who suffer from a grief, remembering their loved one memory could seem hard, but it's a solution to bring them back to life. And finally, the last but not the least suggestion is writing down your diary. Write your stressful thoughts and feelings in the form of a diary. Remember, problems look way smaller when they're written down. Mental pressure is scary at first. Remember the airplane crash? When you realize you've lost somebody that meant a lot to you, you're not sure how would life be without them. Our unconscious mind tends to help us, and it automatically starts to work. But what if we knew how to consciously get over it? It's up to us to use our conscious mind and get over the problems and manage the stress. So what would you do? Would you leave it to your unconscious mind or train your conscious mind? It's up to you. Thank you.